Previously, on the Crazy Train.
Here, put your arms by your sides. I'm going to hypnotize you.
With excessive debt left over from a dishonest business partner,
all he cared about was John Huffman.
the Judds have to go on to government welfare.
I'm trying not to be really mad at our business partner.
When their church leader, Logan Shepherd, undermines their efforts to recover,
I'd never had a bishop lie to me before.
the Judds leave their congregation.
I wasn't willing to wait around and find out if my concerns were going to get confirmed.
Before the Judds can get their sexually traumatized teenage daughter help,
If our daughter commits suicide, that would just destroy us.
Tia disappears and doesn't come home.
We haven't seen your daughter. She's not here.
The Judds are disturbed when they discover who has been hiding Tia.
All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's grooming my daughter.
When Jerry justifies keeping the Judds' daughter,
She had no intention of sending her back.
the Judds decide their only option is to involve the authorities. After their unnerving conversation with Jerry Glass, the Judds felt like they had no choice but to involve the police.
How can the sheriff's office help you right now?
They called Sacramento County and requested help bringing their daughter home.
I had no desire to call the police. This was the nuclear option. I'm having to call the police on my neighbors. I knew Jerry was going to get in big trouble, possibly jail time and criminal charges. That's just lame, but at the same time, we couldn't let her keep our daughter.
On Friday morning, Officer David Conger from the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office responded to the call. When the Judds explained the situation and asked him to bring their daughter home, Conger had them call the school and confirm Tia was in attendance. He then informed the Judds that Tia did not qualify as a missing person if she was in school.
He said if she didn't come home that night, that we could call back and file a missing persons report. But even then, he said the police weren't going to bring her home. And I said, why not? And Officer Conger goes, oh, well, there's this new law in California that any kid 12 and older can live wherever they want.
The Judds were not aware of that supposed new law. Conger repeated the law to the Judds and then told them their only option for getting their daughter back was to try and grab her while she was on public property.
Officer Conger suggested when Tia is getting out of school, we can try and grab her, put her in our car, and take her home. And we were like, how's that supposed to work?
The Judds were worried Tia would not come willingly and probably make a scene. What if someone called the police or reported child abuse?
The officer said, you don't need to worry about it. You're obviously not abusive people. I'm looking at your kids right now, and it's obvious they're not abused.
The officer explained that any abuse would be clearly identifiable, including bruises, broken bones, neglected wounds, and dirty and uncared-for children.
He said our kids were obviously not abused. Lumpy.
Fontaine wanted to know what Officer Conger meant when he said the Judds should grab their daughter. Officer Conger explained to the Judds that Tia was still legally their daughter, and they had the right to restrain her against her wishes. Fontaine was incredulous.
So the police were basically saying, we're not going to try to help you get your kid back. Your only real option is to go and kidnap her back yourself.
He said if our daughter did not comply, we should put her in a headlock like this and simply put her in the car. Just don't hit her. He said, and I quote, if she's fighting you and gets hurt in the process, that's not child abuse. That's her being stupid.
The Judds were not convinced that grabbing their daughter out of school and forcing her into their car was a good idea. Instead, the Judds proposed a different idea to the officer.
We said, wait a minute, what if we grabbed her in front of you? That way nobody freaks out. You're already there, you know what's going on. And Conger said, yeah, that'd be fine.
But this supposed new California law, the officer quoted, still had Hannah and Fontaine confused. If they went through all this effort to bring their daughter back, what would be the point?
What good would it do if she were to just sneak off and disappear again? Only now she'll make sure we can't grab her and bring her home.
Then the Judds had an idea.
So this was a new law in California. And I thought, wait a minute, it won't be valid if we take Tia out of the state.
I ran the idea past the officer. I said, hey, if we get Tia in the car and drive her directly to Wyoming to her grandparents' house, would that be legal? And the officer was like, well, yeah, she's your daughter.
Officer Conger advised the Judds to call and make a missing persons report if their daughter did not come home after school that day, and then he left.
We thought when we had texted Jerry and she said she could keep our daughter without our permission or consent or knowledge, we thought she was full of beans. But we weren't positive because we thought Jerry was like a government employee, so maybe she knew the law better than we did. But now we had a police officer confirming that what Jerry said was true, so maybe this new law was legit.
I really wanted to talk to a lawyer at that point, but there was no way. We had no money.
Hannah and Fontaine immediately contacted Hannah's parents in Wyoming and explained the situation.
I asked them if they'd be willing to take our troubled daughter and hopefully give her the help that she needed.
Hannah's father was a family doctor. Maybe he could get Tia the medical help she needed.
Plus, it would give Tia a clean break from possibly drugs and alcohol or unhealthy relationships that she had developed here in California.
Hannah's parents said they would discuss it and call back soon. Hoping her parents would agree to take Tia, Hannah began packing the car to make the trip to Wyoming. She packed food, water, and emergency birth supplies in case they did not have access to a hospital during the trip through Nevada. As they were packing, Hannah and Fontaine kept thinking about their conversation with Officer Conger. The new law he cited had the Judds very concerned.
We were thinking, California is out of control. There's no way we can raise our children here if this is the new law. We're probably going to have to leave the state.
Meanwhile, Fontaine called his contact Barbara at CPS, hoping to find another option and some clarity on this new California law, but he never got a call back. That evening, the Judds received an answer from Hannah's parents in Wyoming. They were willing to take Tia. Hannah and Fontaine had a quick family council with their two older kids, Caleb and Trixie, about how they should go about getting Tia off the neighbor's property and into the car. Caleb came up with an idea. He reminded Hannah and Fontaine that Tia really wanted her birth certificate and social security card.
The idea was to get Caleb to offer to meet Tia in secret at the nearby park to give her stuff. But then, once she was off of Jerry Glass's property and on public property, we could just grab her, put her in the car, and take her directly to Wyoming. Caleb also had the great idea of making a fake birth certificate and social security card. That way, if things didn't go according to plan, we wouldn't lose the originals.
The plan seemed safe. It would be that night, it would not make a scene, and the Judds did not need to involve the police. But they had to act quickly. Hannah was 2 weeks past her due date and could go into labor at any moment. Plus, Hannah's sister would be meeting them in Salt Lake the next day to pick up Tia and take her on to Wyoming. It was late at night when Caleb messaged his sister, but Tia did not respond until after 1 in the morning. By then, the Judds had already gone to bed. In the morning, Tia still hadn't returned home, so Fontaine followed Officer Conger's instructions and called the police again.
Sheriff's Department.
Hi, good morning. I need to file, I think it's called a missing persons report or something like that.
Okay.
So I'd like my daughter back.
Okay.
The people that she's with, they don't want to actually let her go. So I have texted though, and they're like, nope. But I'm kind of freaking out here.
And then we can send an officer out to try and mediate.
The police arrived a couple hours later. It was Officer Conger again.
I was kind of hoping for a different officer to double check the facts, because I couldn't believe there was this law that a child could live wherever they wanted.
Accompanying Officer Conger was another officer, Stacy Patterson, but she did not give the Judds much confidence.
She looked like she was right out of the academy, and she was like this excited, go-get-'em type, like the rabbit in Zootopia.
You want to be an elephant when you grow up? You be an elephant. Because this is Zootopia. Anyone can be anything. Ready to make the world a better place?
But she also seemed like she had a chip on her shoulder, like she had something to prove.
Sir, I'm not just some token bunny.
Officer Patterson confirmed what Officer Conger had said previously. There was a new law in California. Any child over 12 could live wherever they wanted, and the police could not bring Tia home if she didn't want to come.
I said, there's no way that's the law. So what, kidnapping's now legal here in California?
The officers explained that it is not kidnapping if the child goes willingly.
I said, wait, so you're saying that some creep can show up in a van and offer my kids free candy and free cell phones, and as long as my child goes willingly, that's okay? And Officer Conger's like, oh, don't be ridiculous.
Fontaine asked who was legally responsible, and the police officers indicated that the Judds were still legally responsible for their daughter Tia. The Judds were confused.
I said, I can't decide where she lives, but I'm still legally responsible for what she does? And they're like, yes, that's correct. You're still legally responsible.
Stumped by this supposed new California law, Hannah and Fontaine tried a different approach. They asked the officers if there were any exceptions. They told the officers that they had reason to believe their daughter had been getting alcohol from Jerry Glass.
We asked if that changed things, and they said, well, we can do a wellness check, and if Tia is drunk, then we might do something.
Officers Conger and Patterson went over to Jerry's house to do a wellness check, and after approximately 45 minutes, they returned to talk to the Judds.
Officer Patterson said they went over to Jerry's house. Tia's fine. There is alcohol over there, but it's not illegal for people to have alcohol in their homes. So there's no reason to bring Tia home. I said, yes, but it's illegal for Jerry Glass to be giving it to my daughter. Tia's a minor. And Patterson said, well, she wasn't drunk, so we're not bringing her home.
In an attempt to persuade the officers to bring her daughter home, Hannah mentioned Tia's recent odd behavior and suicidal gestures, how Tia was urinating in glass jars, self-medicating, hiding a drawer full of used tampons, and writing notes to kill herself.
I said, does that change things? Is that an exception?
Officer Patterson did not answer Hannah's question. Instead, she changed the topic and started lecturing Hannah on how to run her home.
She was so condescending. She was like, yeah, so she doesn't like it when you have her take a buddy everywhere and that you're always checking her social media. If you want her to come back, you're gonna have to change that.
Hannah could not believe she had a police officer standing on her doorstep, telling her she had to stop monitoring her teenager's social media if she wanted her child back.
This lady has no idea what my family rules are. She had no idea the issues I'd been dealing with my daughter for the past couple years. She had never even stepped foot in my house before. Who is she to be telling me that I should be changing my rules?
I thought this would be a slam dunk. I call the police, they bring my daughter home. Why am I having to beg and plead for the police to do their job and just bring my daughter home?
Hannah asked the officers to step outside so she could counsel with her husband on what to do.
Hannah told me she didn't trust the female officer and didn't want anything to do with her, and I agreed. I didn't trust her either, but the police were here now, and Hannah was about to go into labor. We wouldn't be able to do anything if we had a newborn. It was now or never.
Hannah reluctantly agreed. Fontaine was also worried Jerry would find some legal way to keep Tia from them.
I had this gnawing in my gut that if we didn't get Tia that day, we would never get her. I don't know, maybe now that we got the police involved, Jerry would have gotten together with Tia and gotten a restraining order, and we wouldn't have even been able to go near Tia.
Since the officers had refused to bring Tia home and the Judds weren't allowed going over to Jerry Glass's private property to go get Tia, Fontaine made a different request.
I said, you know what? I haven't seen or heard from my daughter in 2 weeks. I have no idea if she's okay. I appreciate you going over there, but I want to hear from my daughter's own lips exactly what's going on. Because I don't believe she wrote that last email. I think somebody else is pulling the strings. I think my daughter's being manipulated.
The officers agreed to escort Tia over to the Judd property. Just to double check, Fontaine pulled Officer Conger aside and asked him again if it was okay to take Tia, put her in the car, and drive her to Wyoming.
He's like, absolutely. Just, remember what I said, though. You can put her in a headlock, you can grab her, just don't hit her.
Officer Conger went and spoke briefly with Officer Patterson away from the Judds.
It looked to me like the two officers were having an argument, and Patterson was really mad, but finally they agreed on what they were going to do.
Officer Conger comes back to me, he's like, yeah, we're good with this plan. We'll go grab your daughter, bring her back, and you can grab her in front of us.
The plan was, when the police escorted Tia over to the Judd home, Hannah and Fontaine would take custody of her and put her in their already packed car. Then they would drive her straight to Wyoming to stay with her grandparents. The police could oversee the whole thing, so it would all be by the book, just like Conger had told the Judds previously. Fontaine then texted Jerry, "Can you bring Tia over? We'd like to talk to her with the police." Stacy Patterson walked over to Jerry Glass's house to get Tia, while David Conger waited at the Judd property. Hannah brought Caleb and Trixie to the front yard so they could help out. The plan was for Hannah to drive directly to Wyoming with Tia, Caleb, and Trixie, while Fontaine stayed home with the other children.
So we had me, my wife, Caleb, and Trixie all there on our front porch. And Officer Patterson goes over to Jerry Glass's house.
Hannah and Fontaine were shocked when Stacy Patterson returned with Jerry Glass, but not Tia.
As soon as they showed up without Tia, I knew they had no intention of bringing my daughter back.
Before the Judds could react, Jerry began to speak.
Jerry Glass walks onto my property and says, "Let me explain something to you."
The Judds were not expecting Jerry to act so arrogant and hostile.
Jerry Glass had been hiding my daughter from me for nearly 2 weeks. And so for Jerry to smugly walk on my property and then start lecturing me about anything instead of apologizing or asking for forgiveness or trying to resolve things, I couldn't believe it. I was about to start yelling at her. It was like, how dare you? How dare you?
Fontaine turned to his wife, who was 9 months pregnant. He had seen her crying herself to sleep each night for the past 2 weeks, worrying about their missing daughter. Then there was Jerry Glass, who showed no remorse for the stress and extreme anxiety she had caused, and was instead standing on the Judd driveway lecturing the Judds. At that point, Fontaine spoke up.
I was like, "Get off my property. I want to have nothing to do with you. Don't you dare come on my property again, and don't you dare come near my family again. Get out of here, you horrible witch of a woman."
As soon as Fontaine started speaking, Hannah noticed Officer Patterson reach for her gun.
I was like, is she planning on shooting my husband for yelling at Jerry, who's 30 feet away?
Jerry immediately threw her hands up in the air and mumbled, "I tried," and walked back to her own house.
The officers both turned to me and they're like, "Oh, well, we're done here. There's nothing we can help you with now." And they leave.
After the police left, everyone went back inside except Fontaine. He could not believe what just happened.
I was so freaking disappointed, and now I'm never going to see my daughter again.
The Judds went back into their house very upset. They could not believe what the police had just decided.
The whole situation seemed like some sort of hostage negotiations, but I realized Jerry had no intention of bringing my daughter back, and neither did the police.
The Judds' frustration quickly turned to anger.
My husband was really mad at Jerry for doing this to our family, and he was also mad at the police for not doing their job, but I was really upset with my daughter. I couldn't believe she was doing this to her family. I couldn't believe she was doing this to me.
While trying to figure out what to do next, Fontaine checked his email and saw a message that piqued his interest.
Fontaine turned to me and goes, "Well, our app just got approved in the App Store." It was really exciting news, but given the circumstances, it was kind of anticlimactic.
I had been working day and night for the past year or so to get it done, and now that Money Pants was finally in the App Store, I should have been celebrating. But it just didn't seem all that important all of a sudden.
Fontaine and Hannah still did not know if their daughter was okay. They had not seen her or talked to her in almost 2 weeks, but then Fontaine realized there was still a chance of helping her.
Finally, I said, I guess I should go hide the birth certificate and Social Security card. I mean, that's the last bargaining chip I have to get my daughter back.
Fontaine went upstairs and noticed Caleb had left his computer open on his desk, something Caleb typically did not do. On the screen was a series of messages with his sister Tia.
I'll get you your birth certificate.
Thank you. Can you take it to Fred's?
Yeah. Don't let Mom and Dad see you, though.
Thank you so much, Caleb. We're coming.
Fontaine realized Caleb had arranged a secret meeting with Tia, and he had already left.
Wait a minute. He's going to go get her and try to bring her back. And I looked at the timestamp. I'm like, oh, snap. He's got a 17-minute head start.
Fontaine ran downstairs and told Hannah he was going to go get Caleb.
My husband was grabbing his keys, and I said, no, you can't go. If anything happens, you'll get blamed for it. You can't go. Let me go. I'll tell you what, I'll take Trixie with me.
Hannah and Trixie drove to neighbor Fred's house where Caleb was supposed to be working that day, but they did not find Caleb there. Just then, Fred pointed something out.
Fred said, yeah, I just wonder what's going on over there at the park. And I see a car with some people around it and a person's videotaping, and the car horn is honking. And there's some yelling going on. And I initially thought, oh, it's probably some teenager shooting a video for school on the weekend, some homework assignment or something.
Then Hannah heard something that alarmed her. The yelling was not some teenager doing their homework assignment. It was Hannah's son, Caleb, and he was calling for help.
And we realized Caleb was the one in the car at the park. Whatever was going on, that was Caleb over there. And so we pull out and we drive on over, jump out of the car, and I see out of the end of the car, I see my daughter Tia, and I see her blonde hair, and I see my son Caleb, and he's in the car.
Get down! Get down! I got Tia!
Hannah was not sure how to respond to the situation.
When I came across the scene and I saw my daughter Tia, I got so excited because I hadn't seen her in 2 weeks, and I was so worried about her, and there she was. There she was. We found her. I could see her. And there's my son, and he was trying to get his sister out. And I felt very proud of my son that, because we had always said, your job is to protect your sister, because he's a strong boy. And it's your job to protect your sisters, and especially Tia. And she's a beautiful girl. You make sure nobody hurts her. You're in charge of making sure she's safe. That's one of your jobs, and that's what your strength is for. And he was holding on to her, and he would not let go.
Hannah was so relieved to see Tia, she did not want to let her out of her sight. When Caleb noticed Hannah's hesitation, he instructed her on what to do.
Get down! Now! Hurry! That's my daughter!
And so I got back in the car. I was panicking. I put one foot on the brake, one foot on the gas. I couldn't even remember how to drive.
Hannah drove home quickly to go get Fontaine. At the same time, Trixie had exited the car and was trying to figure out what to do. A park employee had called 911, and the police were on their way.
Get off her, Fred, so she can breathe.
No.
Get off her so she can breathe.
You need to stop. What's going on? Is there a fight?
Neighbor Fred walked over from his house and tried to get everyone to calm down.
Get off her chest.
Please pull me out. He's hurting us.
Okay, get off. What's going on?
Please pull me out.
Okay. Just stay in your house. Everybody's going to stay here. Okay.
Less than a block away, Fontaine was in his backyard when he heard a car horn blaring down the street. He went out to investigate, only to find his wife pulling into the driveway.
My husband comes out of the backyard. He was holding our toddler and had some other kids with him. And I said, get in the car. There's a fight at the park. And that was my only explanation. And I told Ruby, you watch the kids.
As Hannah was driving back to the park with Fontaine, Trixie was getting upset with what she was hearing.
But she left home because she's being abused.
Trixie was keenly aware of Tia's false abuse allegations and was fearful that she was going to lose her siblings and parents to CPS. In a panic, 14-year-old Trixie began yelling to counteract Tia's lies.
She's being abused. No, Tia's a liar! Tia's a liar!
She is a liar, buddy.
Fontaine and Hannah arrived at the park, and Fontaine quickly assessed the situation.
That's
my daughter!
Okay.
I walk up and I look in and I see this heavy-set, tattooed female in this summer dress with my daughter in a headlock. And my daughter's got a bloody nose. My daughter's holding onto the steering wheel. Caleb's lying on top of her in the passenger seat, pulling on her.
There was some woman in the front seat of the car that I've never seen before in my life. Like, she's way older than my daughter. Who is this? Who has my daughter?
I noticed Jerry Glass standing there. It looked to me like Jerry Glass was in the process of selling my daughter to sex trafficking, and Caleb, my son, had intervened.
Kidnap budget. Get the out.
Get
Touch.
There's Jerry Glass watching my daughter getting hurt, and it looked like she had orchestrated the whole thing.
Hey, bud. Touch her.
Fontaine walked past Jerry Glass to get his daughter.
Shut my daughter! Shut the door!
Hey, buddy.
I don't know what went through my mind other than I'm the father. My daughter is in danger. I'm going to get her out of here.
Fontaine would later learn that before he arrived, Jerry had been punching, hitting, and scratching Caleb. As soon as she discovered that someone was videotaping, she stopped and exited the vehicle and pretended to be an innocent bystander. During the melee, Jerry had also hit Tia in the nose and caused her to start bleeding.
Hey, buddy.
No, that is my daughter!
Stop. You need to
That is
stop.
my daughter!
This is assault right here. You need to stop.
Just as the Judds had predicted to Officer Conger, neighbors and bystanders got very upset and tried to intervene when the Judds tried to grab their daughter on public property.
I don't care if it's your own sister. It's still her.
Get off of me! Why are you doing this? Let us
Nick.
It doesn't matter.
The woman who had my daughter was holding on to the steering wheel and onto my daughter's neck like this to prevent her from getting pulled out of the car. And my daughter was also holding on to the steering wheel. And so what I did is I reached in the car and started pulling back my daughter's fingers one at a time off the steering wheel. I remember my neighbor Fred was there, and he was next to me, and he was trying to get the lady to let go of my daughter's neck. He was trying to get my daughter out of the chokehold. My husband and son were pulling my daughter. And I was saying over and over again, this is my daughter. This is my daughter.
Get off of me! That is my daughter!
Nick.
It doesn't matter.
Despite the screaming and yelling of the tattooed female, Hannah was able to hear her daughter make a troubling statement.
My daughter was saying, I'm not on drugs, Mom and Dad. I'm not on drugs. I'm not on drugs. I'm not on drugs.
Hannah wondered why Tia was making that unsolicited claim. Why was she saying that? Hannah could not help but wonder if Jerry was drugging her daughter.
Nick.
It doesn't matter.
My daughter.
My daughter! Oh, this is my daughter! Get off!
As soon as Hannah got all of Tia's fingers off the steering wheel, the tattooed female immediately became aggressive towards Hannah and repeatedly tried to kick her in the stomach.
This is my daughter! Get off!
I was scared that the woman who had been holding her in the headlock was gonna hit me.
Get off!
You're gonna have to.
You cannot take my daughter from me!
Hannah was surprised at the aggression. She had not touched the tattooed female.
I had to back up, and I was scared because I thought, I have to be really careful. I'm pregnant. I need my daughter back, but if I can't get hit.
After trying to kick Hannah, the tattooed female headbutted Fontaine.
You cannot take my daughter from me!
What the hell? Hold still.
I did not. You have not hitting me.
This is my daughter!
Right after the tattooed female headbutted Fontaine, she let go of Tia to strike him. This provided Caleb and Fontaine a brief window to pull Tia out of the car. Because Tia was struggling, Fontaine immediately put her into the headlock Officer Conger had originally instructed him to use.
I did exactly what the police officer said. I put Tia in a headlock and walked her to my car, calmly put her in my car. At one point, I even gave a thumbs up to the camera guy. Why? Because I knew what I was doing was right. I was in control. I was in complete control of my faculties. I knew exactly what I was doing. Not only that, I was doing exactly, literally exactly what the police had told me I could and should do to get my daughter back.
However, while Fontaine was preoccupied putting Tia into the car, the tattooed female ran towards Hannah and her daughter Trixie.
I panicked because if she hit me or kicked me, there wasn't really anything I could do to protect myself because I was so big and pregnant. And I remember going, oh no, she's gonna hit me in my belly.
The tattooed female managed to hit both Trixie and Hannah, but neighbor Fred quickly intervened.
My daughter! You! No!
Get the license plate? You got the license plate?
Hannah got into the driver's seat of the car and pulled away from the park.
When we put my daughter in the car, we had every intention of driving straight to Wyoming. We weren't going to stop.
As they were leaving, Fontaine had some choice words for Jerry Glass.
Rotten hell, Jerry! Jerry, rotten hell!
You!
Rotten hell! You are such a I don't know who you are, but you are.
I thought my husband acted more than reasonably in the situation and exhibited an enormous amount of restraint. He didn't hit anybody, he didn't punch anybody, he didn't beat the living daylights out of anybody, for even though they had his daughter in a headlock and it was just, she had been missing for 2 weeks.
She's a minor, that's her parents.
Hey, she didn't want to be there. Come on.
Because quite frankly, if someone were to kidnap my child, I would feel like I had the right to kill him if I had to get my daughter back.
As Hannah pulled out of the park, a police officer pulled up behind her.
I was saying to my husband, I'm like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? Because I was still in this panic mode of not quite being able to think straight.
Just then, the officer following them turned on his lights.
My husband's like, well, you have to pull over.
Hannah pulled over at the school next to her home. Jerry Glass and the tattooed female followed close behind.
The officer walks over, my wife rolls down her window, and I said, "Officer, those two women just kidnapped my daughter. I want them arrested."
Just then, Hannah noticed Tia's nosebleed. She watched as Tia blew her nose to make it bleed worse.
And I saw her take her hand, rub it up her face like this, and then put her hand on the window like this.
When the officer saw the blood Tia smeared on the window, he had an unusual reaction.
He freaked out and started like panicking. And it was kind of weird for a police officer to get freaked out about blood, but it was just a bloody nose.
The officer, Taylor Magaziner, immediately called for backup, and soon more police cars pulled up, along with an ambulance and a fire truck. Officer Magaziner took Tia out of the vehicle and put her in handcuffs. Hannah and Fontaine did not know what was going on.
All of a sudden, there were all these police cars pulled up, a fire engine, an ambulance. It was like a little overwhelming.
Just then, a police officer walked up and asked Hannah if she had a stun gun in her car.
I'm like, what's a stun gun? And they pull out this big gun thing. And I'm like, no, we don't have one of those.
The officer had Caleb step out of the car for questioning. The last police cars to pull up were Officers Conger and Patterson, the two officers who had originally handled the Judd's call for assistance. Officer Patterson took charge of the situation, and the Judds could overhear her telling the other officers that Fontaine was the guilty person. Hannah and Fontaine could hear Stacy Patterson deriding the Judds, but defending Jerry Glass. Officer Magaziner asked Fontaine to exit his vehicle to talk, but then immediately put him in handcuffs.
I'm like, "Excuse me, am I getting arrested?" And he's like, "No, you're getting detained." "For what?" He's like, "It doesn't matter." And he put me in the back of a squad car. And I'm like, is this a joke?
Fontaine noticed Jerry Glass and the tattooed female were not in handcuffs or being detained, and he didn't understand why. From the back of the police car, Fontaine noticed his neighbor Fred walking towards the officers and was relieved because Fred would be able to set the record straight. Fred could explain that Fontaine had not hit or hurt anybody and was only at the park for a few moments.
Fred comes up, I can give a statement if you guys need, and they're like, no, go away.
The police sent Fred away. They did not get a statement from him or ask him any questions. Fontaine did not understand why the police would dismiss witnesses. Then Fontaine had an idea.
They had the window open just a crack, and I yelled out the window, Hannah, call a lawyer.
Officer Conger quickly ran over to the police car and rolled up the window so Fontaine could not talk to anybody.
Nobody ever questioned me, never asked me what happened. At one point, a female officer came over, looked at me, and said, do you have any injuries? And I said, yeah, the side of my head, I got hit. And she goes, okay, I see that, and left. Not what happened, how long were you there, what was going on, what's the scenario, nothing.
The Judds would later find out that while Fontaine was being detained in the police car, Officer Patterson entered the back of the nearby ambulance and interviewed Tia.
Tia, I need you to tell me from the beginning, how did you get here, okay? I know.
And he's not getting arrested, is he?
No, he's not.
I tell you, I don't want you guys to
Tia, I need you to focus. He's not. Okay. As soon as we finish this interview, I will let you know what's going on, okay? We just need to get through this interview, okay?
Tia explained to Officer Patterson that the reason she was at the park was to get her IDs from her brother.
I needed my IDs out of my house because I can't work for anyone. I can't get emancipated unless I can prove that I have a job. So I can't get a job without my IDs. I can't get a license. I can't transport myself. So I need my IDs, and it's a lot of work to get them.
Officer Patterson then asked for details about when Fontaine arrived and what his involvement was.
Okay, hold on. When did your dad show up, hon?
At the very end of the struggle, my dad shows up and he yelled at Jerry that Jerry was a that kidnapped me, and this guy came over and he's like, stop, and my dad's like, no, she kidnapped my kid. She kidnapped him. Let my daughter go.
As he sat on the grass, 16-year-old Caleb was not sure if he was going to get arrested for what he did. For the past 2 weeks, he had watched his sister Tia's behavior become more and more bizarre at school, and he was worried about her. She was his best friend. He had watched his parents work to get Tia home. He knew they were emailing her. They had called the school. They had called the police. They had made plans to take her to Wyoming. Caleb was there when Officer Patterson brought Jerry Glass over instead of Tia. He saw how upset his parents were after the police refused to bring Tia home. That's when Caleb decided to take matters into his own hands. He came up with a plan to get Tia back.
My mom and dad are just like demoralized and stuff. And that's when I came in. I was just like, all right, it's my turn. Because like, I got this.
He did not want to involve his parents, though.
I was just like, they're a little agitated right now. They might mess this up. I should probably like not tell them.
So Saturday afternoon, shortly after the police had left, Caleb messaged Tia and told her to meet him at the park at 1:30. He would bring her birth certificate and social security card. He figured he could go and get Tia and bring her back himself.
What do I need? I should bring a knife so I can slash the tires, so they can't go away. So I was like, all right, perfect, good plan.
He left his computer open with the expectation that his parents would eventually discover where he had gone and why. It was his backup plan if things went awry.
I'm like, by the time they find this, I'll probably need help. By the time they notice it, I'm probably in trouble.
He grabbed the fake birth certificate off his father's desk and went out the back door. He jumped over the back fence, leaving his wallet behind. It was a clue for his parents to find if they went looking for him.
This is me growing up on Hardywood, and I love that sort of thing. All right, just gotta leave a couple clues behind.
Caleb arrived at the park, expecting just Tia and one other person. He was surprised to see Jerry Glass had come along as well and was riding in the back seat.
I started talking to Tia. I'm like, hey Tia, how are you doing? Just kind of making like small talk.
Caleb told Tia that her parents were really worried about her, but Tia responded that she simply could not go back. That's when Caleb decided to act.
She's like, oh, I can't go back, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, hey, regardless of that, you need to come home. So then I reach inside, I unlock the door, and I open it, and I start pulling her out. And then she starts screaming and stuff. And Jerry was like, blow the horn, and she's doing that. I was like, oh shoot, once she drives away. So I reach over, I grab the keys out of the ignition, turn off the car, and I throw them behind me.
The scene quickly became a wrestling match. The tattooed female was holding Tia in a chokehold, and Caleb was trying to pull Tia out of the car. After a few minutes, Caleb's strength began to wane.
I'm like holding on to Tia, and Jerry started like clawing me, and then I started getting kind of exhausted because it'd been a couple minutes and fighting is hard.
Caleb did not know what to do. He refused to hit or hurt anyone, but the two women were hitting him and refusing to let Tia go. Then he had an idea.
So I was just like, shoot. And then I was like, all right, well, what if I push the driver outside on the driver's side? So I open up that door and start trying to like push her out.
Fortunately for Caleb, his backup plans worked. While he was wrestling at the park, Fontaine found the open computer with the messages as well as Caleb's wallet he left behind, which led to Hannah driving down to neighbor Fred's house, which led to Fred hearing the commotion at the nearby park, which led to Hannah and Trixie driving over to find Caleb and Tia.
And then I looked up and I see our family car with Mom driving. So then I start yelling, Mom, go get Dad.
Get Dad! Now, hurry!
Another minute passes and I see Mom pulling in super fast, and then Dad and Mom hop out, start trying to pull Tia out from the driver's side, and then switch over to my side. We both pull her out together, we get her in our car, and we drive down the street.
Before they left the park, though, Caleb asked his sister Trixie to run and grab his zapping flashlight. He didn't want to lose it.
Then we get pulled over by the cops. I had my knife taken away, even though I didn't use the knife, and I really liked that knife. It was my favorite knife.
As Fontaine sat in a police car and the other Judd family members sat nearby, the officers spent a long time talking to Jerry Glass and the tattooed female.
They were getting a full report from them and getting notes from them, and I figured our turn would be next.
Finally, an officer asked Hannah what happened. Hannah gave a quick summary of the events at the park.
I said, it was just this big wrestling match, and we got my daughter out of the car, put her in our car, and drove over here. What do you want to know?
Hannah did not realize that was her one opportunity to give her statement. The officer did not ask any follow-up questions. He did not get an extensive report like the police had gotten from Jerry Glass and the tattooed female. That was it. It lasted all of 30 seconds. Hannah began to worry that the police weren't going to do the right thing. They didn't ask the questions she was expecting them to ask her. They had already dismissed Fred. They didn't contact the 911 caller, and they had Fontaine in handcuffs. Then Hannah realized that she could easily exonerate her husband. She remembered seeing some people videotaping the events at the park. All the police would have to do was watch the video. It would show that Fontaine hadn't done anything wrong. She pleaded with the officers to go find the video of what happened, but they refused.
It was like they had already decided what had happened, and they didn't want anyone or anything to interfere with that verdict. It was really weird. I thought police were supposed to ask questions and find out what was going on. This was like the complete opposite of that. They were sending people away, and the only people they wanted to hear from were Jerry Glass and this tattooed woman.
Officer Patterson then approached Hannah and demanded to know the names of all of Hannah's children.
I said, well, what do you need that information for? And she just says, because I'm turning you in to CPS. I figured I was being accused of child abuse or something. And I said, okay, well, I'm not giving you that information.
Hannah remembered the admonition from the CPS worker from years prior that a parent should never provide CPS with the names of their children.
I'm trying to figure out what that was about. Like, why would CPS need to be involved? If anything, we were trying to protect our daughter.
Meanwhile, the paramedics asked Hannah's permission to take Tia to the hospital because she had a bloody nose.
I said to them, she gets really bad bloody noses, and it's just a bloody nose. I'm almost positive of it, but I thought if I said don't take her to the hospital, I'd get in trouble. I was like, okay, well, do what you think is best. You're the paramedic. So my daughter got taken off to the hospital.
Fontaine was still in the hot police car and had no idea what was going on.
I can't hear anything because the windows are rolled up. I'm just waiting, dripping with sweat.
Then, to his surprise, Fontaine was removed from the police car, taken across the street, and was officially arrested.
They take my phone and my wallet and all my belongings. And I said, am I under arrest? And the officer goes, yep, and put me in the back of the car. And I said, for what? He's like, they'll tell you at the station. I didn't even know what I was being arrested for. I was 100% clueless and baffled as to why I was being arrested.
The police never got a statement from Fontaine. They never asked him what happened, and he was never read his rights.
They handcuffed my husband. I said, wait a minute. Why are you arresting my husband? I thought they were going to arrest Jerry Glass and the other woman.
Fontaine had been at the park for about 90 seconds. During that time, he had extracted his missing daughter from the car. He had followed Officer Conger's directions exactly on how to restrain his daughter if she resisted. Now he was under arrest, and he had no idea why. Despite it all, Fontaine was unfazed.
I remember as I was walking over to the second police car, I was as calm as could be. I wasn't worried about being arrested. I knew this was just a big misunderstanding and would get cleared up. Everything was going to be fine. It reminded me of being arrested in Wyoming when I was so sick. It was just a big misunderstanding, and the police realized their mistake and apologized, and all the charges were later dropped.
After Fontaine got taken away in the police car, Hannah asked the officers what hospital Tia had gone to so she could go see her. The officers told Hannah she could not visit Tia because she was under protective custody through CPS. Nobody was allowed to see Tia. Hannah asked for clarification.
So that means Jerry Glass can't take her back into her house, and Jerry Glass can't go around her anymore, correct? That's what that means, right? And they said, yes, nobody can go around her. She's in protective custody.
Despite her bad experiences with CPS, Hannah thought they might be helpful after all.
They got my daughter out of Jerry Glass's house.
As a result of Officer Patterson's report, the police informed Hannah that CPS would be doing an emergency check on her home and her other children within 24 hours.
I didn't know what I was going to do. My husband was taken off to jail. I didn't know how to reach him. I called the jail. I had to pay a bunch of money to supposedly leave him messages. He never got the messages. And I didn't know where my daughter was. I hadn't even been home all day. There had been all this disaster going on, and I had CPS coming sometime soon to come look at my house, and I started having contractions.
Hurry, Mom! Hurry! Fred! Help! Can't breathe. Stop it. Get off her ribs so she can breathe.
No.
Get off her so she can breathe.
You need to stop.
Hey.
What's going on? Is it a fight?
Buddy, you need to stop.
Get off. You're overreacting, dude. You're on
The cops are coming.
You're off her chest.
Please pull him out. He's hurting us.
Okay, get off. What's going on?
Please pull
Where
him
are you
out.
going? Okay. She's staying at her house. Everybody's going to bring her home.
Okay.
Nobody's going nowhere. Yeah, it's okay. The cops are coming. All right, let the cops come. Let the cops come. It's fine. So let's go.
No, that's fine.
want you to go
The
to
cops
jail.
are coming here
Just
right
go
now.
to jail.
He's calling
I'm
them.
filing charges.
Do you have them, Greg?
Look,
Do you want me to call?
Everything's going to be
Look
fine
at
if you
my
just,
hand.
as long as you're cool, the cops aren't going to do anything. Just step out of the car and everybody's cool. Nobody's going to run away. But you don't want to go to jail.
No, as soon as my dad comes, I'll be
Yeah,
gone.
yeah, just step out of the car. This looks bad. If the cops come now, you're going to jail.
As soon as my dad comes.
No. How about
Buddy,
now?
hey, can you get out of the car?
Nobody's going to go.
Hey, Bud. Bud, can you get out?
Okay.
No, please.
Well, just pull back a little. All right, we'll just pull back.
I pulled back.
Let me talk to the young lady then. Let's,
But I should not home because she's being abused.
No,
Church, Dad's a liar! Dad's a liar!
She is a liar.
Hey, Bud.
This is my daughter.
Yeah.
No,
Hang on.
that's my daughter!
Okay, this is
That
my
is
daughter.
my daughter!
This is my daughter. Kidnap Bud. Get the
He did it!
Don't
touch her.
Hey, Bud.
Don't touch her.
Don't touch her.
My daughter! That is my daughter! Shut the door!
Hey, buddy.
No, that is my daughter!
Stop. You need to
That is
stop.
my daughter!
This is assault right now. You need to stop.
I'm filing assault.
I don't care if it's your own sister. It's still assault.
Get off of me! Why are you doing this? Let it down!
Nick.
This is my daughter!
Stop.
Oh, my daughter! Oh, this is my daughter! Get off!
You're gonna have to.
You cannot take my daughter from me!
Hey, what the hell?
Hold still.
I did not. You hit hitting me.
This is my daughter! This is my daughter! Just headbutt me! No! This is my daughter!
Hold still. That's her parents.
This is my daughter! No!
My daughter.
Somebody help me!
You can't do this.
My daughter! This is my daughter! You! No! My daughter!
Get the license plate.
No!
You got the license plate?
Please don't! Yes, you are!
Let them pull away.
This is my daughter!
Hey.
Get off of me! Cops are right there!
Rotten hell,
Get
Jerry.
off of me!
Jerry, rotten hell.
You!
Rotten hell. You are such a. I don't know who you are, but you are.
I can't believe you guys can do that! They're mine!
That's her parents.
They cops get set! She didn't have to go home!
She's a minor. That's her parents.
She didn't want to be there! Come on, let's go. I'm calling.
Go over there. The cops are right
She's a
there.
minor. That's her parents. All I saw was a guy choking a girl.
It was choking the
Not up to me.
I mean, at least we broke it up.
Yep. Not up to